Hello everyone, welcome back to the Anthony podcast. And today I'm joined by Sam Smith from from Gimme and Wrestlesphere. So how you doing today, Sam?
I'm all right, Anthony. I'm privileged to be joining you. I feel like I'm taking on rarefied air, being on this podcast to quote Richard Holiday and MJF from MLW.
It's a pleasure to have you on, mate. So 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 before we start getting into Wrestlesphere. Would you mind just explaining to the audience how you became a wrestling fan in particular, please?
Oh wow, this is it's a long. Well, I'll give you the abridged version. I was around my friend's house and they were watching a certain WrestleMania and on like the first wrestling match I ever watched was the best wrestling match I've ever seen, and I've never been able to replicate it because it was Stone Cold versus Bret Hart. It was the double turn. We all know it,
Yeah,
and that because that match just epitomizes everything about what makes wrestling great. The storytelling, the characters, the fact that one came out to cheers, the other came out to boos, and that was completely reversed by the other side. I think I was just a little kid. I was barely in high school, if I was even in high school, and I fell in love with it at that moment. I had to know what happened next, and I then I then was watching wrestling on Channel 5. Again, you're from the UK like me. You
yeah.
might you might remember WCW was on Channel 5 back in the day when we were kids.
I, I was definitely too young to remember WCW on Channel 5.
And well, I thought that was the same thing. I thought that was WWF. So I was watching it and I was like, where the hell's Bret Hart? Where the hell's Steve Austin? And it was only that I learned many years, well, a couple of weeks later, really, that there were two different products. And I just thought, well, screw it. I'm going to watch both. And that's how I became a wrestling fan. And my philosophy of screw it, I'm going to watch both has followed me even about nearly 30 years later.
Yeah, so how did that go from you just watching it and being like a normal fan? I hate saying normal, but you know what I mean, just like a sit down and watch it fan to being a podcaster and giving your opinions on it.
Dom Smith happened. No, I'm joking. There was quite, quite a road, quite a road in between that. But yeah, he was a big part of it, as I'm sure you know. But yeah, well, I just started working in business, really, in marketing. I did quite well in that. But it always felt a little bit hollow. It gave me a creative outlet, and bit by bit, eventually I did a degree in journalism to because I enjoyed writing, became a journalist, did normal journalism, if whatever that may be, like newspapers, magazines, got into feature writing. Um, I got more and more and more into gaming journalism. Again, technically my day job is a gaming journalist. Wrestlesphere and Give Me a Hug Yeah are
Yeah,
in many ways side projects. But anyway, and then bit by bit, Dom approached me one day and said, "Look, I'm taking on more and more wrestling work. Do you want to do some for me? Because I can't do it all on my own. I trust you to do it. So, we already knew each other. So we did that, and then it got even bigger. I joined Gimme a Hall, yeah, and from Gimme a Hall, yeah, there were certain limitations, that things that we couldn't do with our growing we were getting more opportunities. The amount of opportunities we were getting, like Give Me a Whole Yeah, was something we had built and we had a lot of pride for. And Anthony and Dom particularly and Dan had built that up into something. But WrestleSphere was our way of being like, right, okay, we using this, it has to be different. Like they could be connected. Like WrestleSphere and Give Me a Whole Yeah are cousins. They're
yeah,
not brothers, they're cousins, but they are part of the same family, but they're also independent from one another. So if we do something naughty and Give Me a Whole Yeah, it doesn't matter that up to WrestleSphere, but we can also make sure we can share those family events almost, and the audience and things like that is the best way to put it.
is it fair to say that Gimme has a lot more relaxed vibe and Wrestlesphere is a lot more, I don't want to say professional, but you know what I mean, like,
Good
like,
word.
like more detailed.
Yeah, well, professional's a fine word to use because yeah, it's like not that we're not being professional on Gimme a Hole, yeah, we are, but on Gimme a Hole, yeah, we can be a little bit more ourselves. We can be a little bit more irreverent, I think is the right word. A bit more cheeky. We don't need to shy away from opinions. Like I've been pretty opinionated on CM Punk on Gimme a Hole, yeah. A lot of the world has misunderstood those opinions and what motivates them and what I actually mean. But when it comes to Wrestlesphere, we're journalists. We are bound by the same rules that would all journalists are bound by, and we try to be as objective as we can with Wrestlesphere because that's what all journalism is. It's the attempt to be as objective as you can. It's striving for it. There's no such thing as true objectivity. We're all bound by our frames and our cultures. But in Gimme a Hole, yeah, where I try to be quite objective in Gimme a Hole, yeah, as well, because I don't really want either those two sides to to blend together. I try and be straight down the line, but we can be a little bit more ourselves and fans and cheeky and naughty on Gimme a Hole, yeah, a bit more human. Where when Wrestlesphere, like with Wrestlesphere, if I'm ever working for that, I take off the hat. I take off the Gimme a Hole yeah hat when I'm doing anything Wrestlesphere related because that communicates to me that right, it's time to be it's time to be a grown up now and not get mad. But not that's not to say that we're not that on Gimme a Hole yeah. But part of the fun of Gimme a Hole yeah is we can be a bit cheeky, we can be a little bit naughty. Where Wrestlesphere we just have to basically it's all about that's when we put on the suit and that's when we tackle things as you say professionally.
I forgot to ask you this a bit earlier, but when you first started getting into wrestling, who were the wrestlers that you gravitated to the most? Excuse me.
Oh, well, I think that's a great question. I don't know if you can see him. He's no, he's there. He's on that shelf just there where my finger is. That's Sting. So I was, like Dom, I was fascinated as a kid by the spooky characters. I still am. I'm wearing my Bray t-shirt today.
Yeah,
I spent, I think, was it about 6 months to a year watching Sting hiding in the rafters like some kind of bird of prey, waiting to swoop down and peck out the eyes of the NWO. And the day he did it, like when I watched that back, it's quite tame because he comes down, he repels down quite slowly, and then he hits them all fake with a baseball bat. But as a child, that was amazing. That was oh my god, he's coming down, he's attacking him. So it was Sting was my guy, and I don't know if you've seen because Dom filmed it. My reaction to Sting coming out at All In last year to Metallica's Seek and Destroy. I lose all my composure and I mark out for a moment, and I've been ridiculed for that but I own it. I was 11 years old again when that happened. Same with the Undertaker. Same with Kane. Kane ripping off the Hell in a Cell door, and oh my, like little me is watching that a little bit scared, a little bit what is going on. Like and we know it's fake, but at the same time we buy in more because we're children, and that's kind of followed me like my entire wrestling career really. Like people get frustrated with me a bit because I'm one of these guys who enjoy WR often quite go down the sports entertainment angle, and same with TNA, they do it too, with like the Undead Realm and all that and nuts crazy stuff. But I love all that, and I think there's a home for it in wrestling. And right now, with this Wyatt Six stuff, I'm a kid again. I'm a kid in a candy shop again, watching Uncle Howdy do his thing. I'm aware that someone's rushed in with a dry ice machine when it happens, but I don't care. It's fun. I enjoy it. So yeah, that's
so as somebody that didn't start watching until 2002, I thought, what would it like watching in the mid to late 90s in the moment?
I nearly swore then. I nearly said it was bat something, but yeah, what you'll remember yourself. It was the 90s. Like we talk about the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, like it was the best era ever. And you go back and you watch some of that stuff now, and it's aged incredibly poorly, a bit like me. But it was a fun time to be a wrestling fan. It just like I actually think we're in the best time to be a fan now, apart from the tribalism, which upsets me a lot. I do feel like this is the best era, but the 90s, the Monday Night War, the Attitude Era, that was a time to be alive as a wrestling fan. Terrible in terms of the actual in-ring work for a lot of it, but in terms of the characters and the storyline and what it gave to the industry. I don't know if I'd be a fan without that. So, because that was my era, I only went back and watched the territories and all of that after that. So, um, what it was like being a fan, it was fun. There was a sense of community really, and until I discovered Gimme a Hole, yeah, I didn't really have that sense of community with wrestling, so my fandom waned until I got it back. But it was a time where you could go in the playground and you could talk to your mates. I can't believe Goldberg didn't speak to Gene, or I can't believe the audacity of Shawn Michaels. And then DX, it was the era of DX. And did you see what they did this week? Oh my God, yeah. Or there was a bit of tribal and a bit of the WCW versus WWF was going on as well. Then you had the ECW guys too. I kind of liked them all, so I didn't really take a side. Um, but yeah, it was just I don't know. It was quite magical to me, and I think like even adult me has worked hard to try and get that back. And I think we sort of have in many ways. Like here I am sat wearing the hat and all of that. So. But yeah, it was magical, I think is my answer, my short answer.
It's like, I've always, cause obviously I'm a bit younger than you are, I would imagine. Because I started watching live in 2002. Now I've obviously gone back because of the network and because of videos or VHSs before that. But I've always wondered what would I think if I was watching it in the moment.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean because I think a lot of fans today now because again I'm 37 this year, so I forget that I'm pushing 40, and a lot of us Attitude Era kids, there were those of us who were going, yeah, throw back the beer, Stone Cold, middle finger up at the sky. We're all married with kids and stuff now and mortgages, so we're not, we're more like IRS than Stone Cold now. But but yeah, it is a weird because when I suppose we look back on that and go, oh, mate, you missed out on the Attitude Era. I think like the Golden Age guys from like the 80s, or whatever, like Hulk Hogan era, Bret Hart's heyday, all of that. They look at us and they think you scumbags came along in the 90s. You don't know what wrestling is and what you go and have a shower. That's how they like look at us a little bit. And I get it, I do. Because I look at the John Cena kids who came into it watching Cena, and I spent many years of my life kind of looking down on them. It's only now when I'm a bit older, I don't do that anymore. I don't chant Cena sucks anymore. In fact, last time I was at a wrestling show and John Cena turned up, I marked out like any other kid. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. It must be mad to look back at that era and be like, what if? And you only missed out by a couple of years as well. So it's like, I think you're a child of the ruthless aggression, aren't you? I suppose.
It's ironic. It's ironic. Cena gives because when John Cena debuted, I think that was the first time I watched wrestling live.
Oh wow, that's mad. Well, what a time! What a moment! To see wrestling live. I can't say that. I think I went to a house show as a kid, and I can't even tell you what it was about or what happened.
When I say live, I watched it on the TV. I don't actually mean. I don't
Oh, I
mean
see.
live as in the arena. I mean live on TV.
Got no, I get you, I get you. But even the same thing though, isn't it? It's like it's a little bit like me. You turn it on your first wrestling show, and the first thing you see is the double turn between Stone Cold and Bret Hart. Like there's no like the only way is down from there. And it's the same with Cena in a way. Like I think a lot of us don't know what we had with Cena, and it's only now we're losing it. We're kind of like, oh, I know I am. I wish I'd appreciated him a little bit more at the time, but I was too busy being a rebel. So
Yeah, but but children that are getting into it now, they're probably saying the same thing about Roman Reigns, right? And it will continue on and on
Yeah.
and on, won't it?
I think you're right, and it's the same. Like it's only a matter of time before they get sick of Cody and they start booing him. It's only a matter of time because we're a fickle bunch of people. But yeah, like I remember with Roman Reigns, my faith in humanity was restored a little bit with Roman Reigns when he announced, he was ill and his leukemia was back, and kayfabe was forgotten about in that moment, and people all of a sudden people were like, "Wow, this guy's his life might be in difficulty. That we need to get support him." And I bought his T-shirt soon after, and things like that. So I think we do have we are decent fundamentally as wrestling fans, as the thing with Roman Reigns proved. When the chips are down, we do come up trumps.
Yeah,
So I do think with Roman Reigns we learned an important lesson, and I think WWE learned a lesson as well. They thought, look, we've got to bring this guy back as a hero. We've got to make sure the world knows he's okay when he is, and we all had the faith that he would be. But and then when he did, it was like, right, now let's lean into it. Let's make this guy a bad guy. And let's be honest, Roman Reigns' heel run as a champion is one of the best runs ever by anyone in all of WWE. And I'm privileged to have been at WrestleMania and to be furious and booing him when he beat Cody Rhodes. So yeah, but again, you don't ever know what you've got till it's gone, I suppose. And it's the same with wrestling.
yeah. So going back to Wrestlesphere, do you know when you first started writing right when you first started writing, can you remember your first real piece that you did?
Think it might have been it might have been a review for a show. There was one day where Dom said, "Look, would you fancy interviewing some TNA wrestlers and maybe some AW and WWE ones after that?" Again, I'm an experienced interviewer. I've done it for years. I'd never quite done it with wrestlers, but I was like, hell yeah. I just looked at it as an opportunity to talk to people I admire, which is kind of how I treat any interview I do, even in gaming, with when I speak to devs and stuff like that. So, or back when I did more traditional journalism, and I might have spoken to councillors or politicians or whatever, or business leaders. I always take it on that's the way I look at it. So it was probably a TNA interview. It might have been at a junket where I had about 20 seconds to say something to somebody. Um, but I just remember being privileged, really. Like Wrestlesphere grew from there. At first, it was just like SamSmith was dabbling with wrestling,
Yeah.
but then it got to a point where obviously we needed to make a decision about what we were going to do with that, and then the rest is history, really.
So, so as you mentioned there, you've interviewed people outside of wrestling. So is there anything that you throw right outside of wrestling and applied it to your wrestling interviews and vice versa?
Yeah, I think so. I think once you've learned the knack of how to interview someone, which I've been doing for a long time, you can kind of apply that format to different things, and like listening to what they say. Like obviously you've got questions in your brain, and if you're organized, written down as well. But the best interviews are like this one. They evolve based on the answers of the interviewee, and they go from there. So that's what I always like to do. I always keep questions as a backup, and I try and let it flow. Like Eric Young, for example, the other day when I was talking to him, we were talking about the NXT crossovers at the moment, which I'm loving. And he got quite excited, and he was talking about them and what he thinks about where it could go. And I just offhandedly went, it's good for the industry. It's good, for the try. It's kind of teaching some people not to be so tribal. And then he launched into a whole thing about that, and a lot of the interview then was me and him discussing tribalism and why it's so stupid, but and things like that. So yeah, I think so. I try and just be the just apply anything I've ever learned as being a reporter in any other walk of life, and then apply it to journalism, where I can be a little bit more silly and have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah, that's the best way to be, like. by the way, I don't mean to kick your ass too much, but I really enjoyed that Eric Young interview.
Oh, thank you very much. It was all him. I was just the silly reporter asking him stuff. But yeah, I mean, Eric Young's the sort of guy who you could interview him about a brick wall, and you'd still get 20 minutes of gold because he's Eric Young. You know, he's just that sort of guy. So, and he's a fascinating. He's the right guy to talk to right now about the NXT TNA stuff because he's been to both places and at a high level. So I felt like he had such a unique insight into one of the most exciting things that's going on in wrestling right now. So that's why, that's not just me plugging our latest interview. That to me was a fascinating moment in time to get to speak to that particular person.
So, 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 so as somebody that's interviewed not only wrestlers but people from outside of the wrestling space, where do you think a lot of interviews go wrong as interviewers? Do you think they can come over prepared or is it something else?
I think, yeah, you can be over prepared. It's happened to me in the past. You can have like too many questions that you want to get through. And so I think sometimes you've got to know when to let go of those questions and just go with the flow and go with what they're saying. And that, because I think when interviewers are rushing to get through their questions, as I've been guilty of in the past, you stop listening to the person you're interviewing and you wait for them to finish talking so you can ask the next question. And that's not the right way to do it. Sometimes you've got to because you might have some important questions to that you
Yeah.
really need to ask. But it's for me, it's all about active listening, hearing what they say, and knowing how to turn it into a conversation rather than a Q&A.
Or maybe if I say something that you can build upon and maybe take the conversation in a new direction.
Yeah, and don't be scared to do that because like if I hadn't have big word like tangentialized with Eric Young about the tribalism thing, he wouldn't have like bless him gone off on that and given me some gold. I nearly put it in the headline when I wrote it up, but I thought, you know what, no, I'll focus on this stuff and I'll let because that might be controversial, so I'll let people discover that for themselves rather than clickbaiting with it, which is the right call, I think, ultimately.
Yeah. And obviously, you said that you've interviewed for years now. So, what was the time of when did you actually start like getting into journalism, and what inspired you to start getting into it?
I think I was always the thing that made me want to be a journalist is I was never really any good at anything apart from like writing. That was something I was good at, but like who makes money from doing that? How do what do you do there? So I think I fell into it accidentally. I think a lot of that comes down to I had a marketing background and marketing like PR and journalism are two sides of the same coin. So, just on literally different sides, but working together and they're connected. So I I was made redundant when I was made redundant from a marketing job when I was still in my very early 20s. I thought, right, I've not got a degree. I'll go and do a degree now. So I went and did it in journalism. When I came out, I got straight back into marketing because that's where the money was at the time. Um, but bit by bit, got more and more and more and more journalism stuff. Got made redundant again, and once I'd been made redundant a second time, I thought, right, I've got enough. I suppose freelance journalism now to just sustain myself based on that. And I wasn't planning on having a full-time job for anybody until I got offered a one I really liked the look of, and I didn't want to turn it down with for Deserto. So I took that, and I thought right, and then just amazingly everything else with like Wrestlesphere just kind of kicked off in the background, and now we've got Screensphere coming up as well.
Yeah,
And me, Andy Spores, and Dom are kind of spearheading that. Like, we've got a pool of freelancers as well. I think the three of us are going to have very different roles within it in terms of what we're heading up, what we're looking after. But and it's probably going to be a much bigger operation than Wrestlesphere. Dare I say, it has the potential to rival SoundSphere in how big it could get. If we, um, but we're now starting to see like we did with Wrestlesphere and the wrestling that was on SoundSphere, these things eventually develop a mind of their own and a will of their own. And when they grow bigger than, like, for example, the wrestling on SoundSphere, Dom needed another pair of hands. I came in, we did Wrestlesphere. Soon became apparent that we needed to make our duo a triumvirate. And we looked for the right person who that could be, and we discovered Andy Spores eventually was the right person for that. So, we brought him in, and so now we had the triumvirates, as I call it. And who knows that we might become a quartet at some point, but right now that's where we are, and it works quite well. And we have the backup of the Gimme a Whole Year guys as well, if need be. So. But yeah, watch this space because the only way is up with all of these things, and it's so much fun and a privilege to be involved.
But I am so I imagine when you first start getting into journalism, you were just writing articles and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. Well, I was doing some freelance work for my local paper. I won't say which one. And I was doing some gaming stuff, but I was writing like gaming articles where you get paid for clicks,
Yeah.
which is a horrific model to use, and anybody who's doing that should give their head a wobble and pay their writers properly. Um, and if you can't do that, then go back to the drawing board and make a better strategy. But yeah, that's just me. Like, we're not going to do that with ScreenSphere or SoundSphere. Like, Dom does things very ethically, does everything the right way. And that's why it's great to be involved with Dom's projects and help, like, work under him and support him, and work then side by side with him. But yeah, I just started out like anybody else. I think you've got to have a flair for writing, with if you get involved in that sort of thing. Because I hear from people all the time, "Oh, I'd love to do that." And it's like, "Well, have you ever written anything in your life?" No. Well, there you go then. And and that's not me. Like, you've got to have, I think, the raw materials there. Um, there's a bit of luck involved. I'm not going to lie. I've had a bit of luck with that stuff too. Like, Dom could have come to somebody else before he came to me with Wrestlesphere. I think there were multiple reasons why, like, he came to me, or I had a background in like running websites and knowing how things work and stuff like that. And I had a passion, and we got on well. So it was just like, it was just a happy combination of ingredients, really. But yeah, I started out quite small, just doing writing to earn some beer money on top of my full-time job. And bit by bit, I could let go of that full-time job and make this my full-time job. And I'll tell you now, Anthony, I'm never going back to anything other than this. It's nice to know I don't need to, and it's nice to know that I think if you're doing something you enjoy, and if you're doing something you're good at, then I think that's a massive tick in the box of life, if that makes any sense. Because I've been the guy who wakes up on a Monday morning and hates work and doesn't want to get in the car and go to work, doesn't has that shower, like, staring at the ground, gets dressed, goes, is a zombie for 9 to 5, and then comes home, eats tea, and rinse and repeat. I've led that life. Um, and this one now, where I'm fulfilled, like, creatively and professionally, and all those other things. Like, it's one of the most important things there is to me. Um, yeah, sorry, I've just realised I've been talking for a long time.
It's okay. So, as you mentioned earlier on, you did it. At first you did it as a bit of extra money, maybe for the, you know, the way society works, the way society works, the way people are now. Yeah, different people are too quick to give up on things. Just as like a genuinely speaking.
I think for some people, no one's told them that you don't have to settle. Does that make any sense? I think, like, I
Yeah,
know
that makes a lot of sense.
I think for some people it's like, you can, if you are unhappy, if you are unfulfilled, work, even if it's just a little bit each day, work to try and to quote Cody Rhodes, do the work. That's a massive part, part of my philosophy too. Damn it, I don't know what a day off is sometimes, but but yeah, I think for some people like I've known people who are very very talented in different things who are like they could do what we do or things like that, and it's like well why don't you just get out there, put your name out there, keep doing little things. Like I think some people sometimes need the confidence or the motivation, or sometimes they just need someone to say to them, you can do it. You have got the raw materials. Like I made a point of when Dom and I went to the UCLan, the University of Central Lancashire's CJAM event, and you had some of these I won't say kids because they're all adults. Like these adults who were saying to us, how on earth would you get into gaming journalism? Where does that even begin? And I'd say to them, I said, look, you're here at the University of Central Lancashire doing a journalism degree. Okay, that's half the battle right there. You're on the right course, getting the right qualification, and you've already got the passion and the expertise. Like you're already, all you need to do is get your degree, keep that passion up, and then keep plugging away when you get out, get your name out there, and keep working hard. And I said, you guys who want to be video game journalists or wrestling journalists or music journalists, you're in the top percentage of people in the country who are likely to become that because of where you are academically and what you're interested in. Like you guys are already halfway there. Like you don't need, you just need to keep doing what you're doing and keep being the best versions of you and put the work in. And it was like the light in their eyes, because I kind of wish someone had said that to me. Actually, somebody did say that to me in uni. It was Dom. But before that, I sometimes think that's what people need to hear. But in terms of other things, if someone's unfulfilled, like or whatever it might be, I think it's just a case of I don't want to use say a term like we think outside the box. Like how does one practically do that? It's about putting in the work, getting the knowledge, and looking into stuff, and then laying the foundation and brick by brick building that. Because Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can bit by bit. Eventually, you've got that wall there, and then you can climb on the wall and build the next part. And it's just that's what I'd say to people. It's like don't settle, don't ever settle because you don't need to.
I find, yeah, like doing this, for example, I find some people do 2 or 3 episodes, yeah, and then they'll stop because they don't see immediate success from it, and I'm like,
Mm.
I understand it can be very time consuming, but if you want something to build up, you have to put the time and the dedication into it.
Yeah, it's also about like this, like you've got to realize that you're not where that's you shouldn't settle. You're also not owed anything. So it's about
Yeah,
make like like clawing there and doing it the right way and doing it ethically. So sometimes I just want to get in bed next to my wife and watch a movie, cuddle our dogs, and I can't because I've got that article I need to write. It's going to take me a few hours. I'm not going to get to bed till late, but it's important. There's things like that. There are little miniature sacrifices. Like I have a full time job, which is technically more than a full time job, if I'm being perfectly honest with myself. But we still manage to run Wrestlesphere on top of that because it matters, and we still manage to run Gimme on top of that because it matters. Like yeah, people do stop at the first hurdle. Like we've had bumps in the road with Wrestlesphere, like quite recently. We've had
yeah.
because wrestling has grown again and become big again. All of a sudden, we're a smaller fish again. So, and that's been quite tough for us. So we've gone back to the drawing board, and we've been like, well, what we're going to do? We're going to improve our reach. Is what we're going to do. We're not going to get down about it. We're not going to beat ourselves up. We're just going to improve the reach of the website, improve the quality of what we're putting out, and come back next time swinging, and we're going to do that. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to like take it on the chin, and then think, right, what do I do to fix it? You know,
Because I can tell you from my personal story, from my personal experience, I've had so many technical difficulties doing this. Like there's been some time where I forgot to turn on my microphone or, you know what I mean, just simple little things like that. And and there's been nights where I've literally driven myself to the point of where I just thought, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. But the next day, I'm really motivated again. So it's about taking the good with the bad and to take it as it comes, isn't it?
I agree as well, and there are some things out of your control as well, and you've got to then like what's one of my biggest problems is you know is knowing when to take a step back and think, right, I can't control that. I can't control, for example, what WWE, AEW might do, but I can control our responses. I can make sure we're sending them the right amount of emails. I can make sure we're putting out the right content. You know, there are things we can control and not beat ourselves up when something doesn't work out because it's like, look, we've been to Money in the Bank. We went to WrestleMania as fans, but we went to Money in the Bank as reporters. We've done all this stuff. We've had all these opportunities. Like WWE know who we are. They know we exist. So like that alone is a massive success. We've been in the room with Cultaholic, with What Culture, with Men's Health, with all those guys. So like we have paid our dues. We've done our bit, but it's like so we are there. We are where we need to be. It's just a case of keeping that going and not losing motivation. Like a recent one, like I know Dom mentioned it actually in
Yeah.
your interview with him. Like Gimme a Hull, yeah, I would stay up till 3 a.m. and do the SmackDown streams, but I noticed it was negatively affecting my health. It was negatively affecting a few things, and I wasn't enjoying it like I used to. So with a tremendous amount of guilt. I walked away from that. Now I'm still a podcast host. I'm gonna come back swinging with a few other things for Give Me a Hole. Yeah, that's why the hat is still on. But I realised doing the streams late night on a Friday night, it's just not sustainable. And there was a reason why I was doing increasingly less of them. It wasn't just because I was away that weekend or I had plans or I was subconsciously putting barriers in front of me to not do it. So I thought, right, I have to step away from that and do it. But then the important thing is to do something else to support the podcast because I'm not just walking away from it and abandoning it. I do now feel a quarter of the responsibility for it as the fourth host.
I I have a similar story to that. Not really about live streaming, but I used to stay up till 5 or 6 in the morning working on the channel, like trying to get interviews, trying to record interviews, and I just found I was sleeping all day and then staying up all night. So obviously it was affecting my everyday life. 'Cause
Yeah,
every time I had to get up early or do something, I was just grumpy and miserable.
yeah, I get you, and it's like I found recently that I for that very reason. So gaming and wrestling are like my two great loves in terms of like pastimes and stuff like that. But I do have a third, which is like my third great love, and that's Warhammer. Like 40K, painting miniatures, that sort of thing. And
What's
I've
I don't mean to cut you off. What's Warhammer?
Oh, sorry, yeah, Warhammer. It's like when you assemble and paint models, and then you do wargaming with them, like some kind of real time chess kind of thing. It's very very geeky and it's very very me.
Is it very similar to role play or is it nothing like that?
It's a bit like I'm trying. What's the best way to describe it? It's basically making models, but it has a strategy game element to it. But for me, it's more about being somewhere quiet, painting that model, doing something creative, something artistic, and I find that insanely therapeutic. Like really, really, because I've got really bad hand and eye coordination, a bit of neurodiversity with dyspraxia and things like that. So that kind of helps me, work on that and maintain those motor skills, and it relaxes me at the same time. And it's so rewarding as well when you see it, like something it's completed. It's taken you several hours, but you've done it and you've nailed it. But my point is, I have leaned more into that in recent years because I came to the realization that gaming and wrestling have somewhat become work. So I was looking for another pastime that isn't that or isn't connected to that. And I thought, wow. So like you work all your life to make your great loves your career. You achieve that. And then you sack those things off and do something else because they don't give you the same level of joy. So that is when I kind of thought to myself, right, I need to now play some games for fun. I now need to watch some wrestling, to enjoy it, not just because I'm a pundit and I have to. And that's allowed me to kind of get back into it again. And I now understand. I have more of a balance between being a fan and and working, because like when I talked to Tom Talks Rubbish, I actually didn't know where that line was. I didn't know where that line between work and leisure time was when it came to gaming and wrestling. And it's still blurry, but I have now kind of taken control of that a little bit more, and I am happier for it. I feel like I got to the promised land and then wasn't happy once I got there, and that says more about me than I think it than anything else. I think and how when you need to know when to be grateful and know when to be satisfied and know when to what your priorities are. I think if that,
Yeah,
any of that makes sense.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, going back a little bit, you mentioned when you trained, it helped your hands. I can't remember the exact word in so apologies. But I was wondering, when you're doing writing, obviously I can imagine you probably do it on the keyboard, but can that can that can that can that affect your hands?
Yeah, massively. When I was in uni, I was a total swot right in uni. I was the annoying guy who he has his hand up when the lecturer asks a question. I was that annoying guy that everybody rolled their eyes at because, oh God, yeah, of course Sam's that was me. And I actually annoyed myself, and there were times where I wouldn't put my hand up and I pretend I didn't know something. But my point is that was me in uni. I was kind of the straight A student, but because it was a journalism course, I was doing shorthand as well. And I just wasn't in step with everybody else. I just couldn't. I was the slowest by a mile. Um, and it got to the point where it was really upsetting me. Because it was I wasn't neurologically capable of doing it shorthand as good as other people. And then when I was working part time at the local newspaper, they'd give me stick about it as well. They'd be like, "Oh, well, you can't be a journalist, you can't do shorthand," which is utter BS. Utter BS. Like, like I've got mates who are journalists with all sorts of disabilities. I know blind journalists. I know journalists like yourself with CP and Tom Talks Rubbish. Like all you guys are proving that those attitudes are just so outdated and they are BS. What it takes to be a journalist is a keen mind and a desire to and an ability to communicate and things like that. But anyway, it got to the point where they said, right, we're not we're going to take shorthand off the syllabus, I suppose, for you. We're not going to grade you on that because it's going to pull down your degree if we do, and it shouldn't, because you're excelling in all the other areas. And I felt really guilty about that. And I actually had a friend once tell me I was a charlatan for doing that, and I gave up too quickly. And like obviously he was wrong, and he was talking rubbish, and he was just trying to put me down. But you do take things like that to heart, and you think, is that true? I've now realised that isn't true at all. Um, but to answer your question, Anthony, like yeah, it does hold you back, and it does. Like, would you like? I'm dyslexic as well, which is kind of funny, I think, because like I read loads of books, and it's never really been something I've noticed. I've just since I was a little kid, I've just been a reader. So I only learned I was dyslexic in my early 20s and thought, well, well, that's nice. And then just carried on doing what I do. So yeah, so like I don't think any of these things should ever hold us back. Like there will be times where they do, and we have to face it. But there's always another path we can take, especially this day and age. It's like you said with keyboards. Like if I was using a pen and paper for journalism, I wouldn't be a very good journalist. I just wouldn't be. But computers exist, so I am.
Yeah. So in new terms like shorthand, does that basically interest me like writing with a pen and paper?
Yeah, but shorthand is an art form in of itself, and newspaper journalists particularly take it very seriously. Like again, I'm of the view that we're in 2024 and we all use MacBooks now, and we don't
Yeah,
need that pen and paper, and we use recording devices and cameras and like I mean, so I would laugh at someone talking about the importance of shorthand in this day and age, not mean spiritedly, but I'd say if you're an aspiring journalist and you might have a disability that makes shorthand difficult, my advice to you is don't worry about it.
yeah,
Don't do your best. But yeah, it's all pen and paper.
yeah. Cause, cause you were talking and as you were talking, I was like, does that mean what I think it means? And it did, so thank you for explaining that.
It's okay.
So, as you said earlier, as you said earlier, you could sometimes get a bit frustrated. I completely understand that. Because obviously, because of my speech pattern, when sometimes when I'm interviewing, I can start stammering a little bit, and sometimes that can really annoy me because I know what I want to say, but I
Yeah.
just can't get it out sometime very well. I can find myself getting really frustrated with, with myself. So I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean when you say you used to get frustrated.
And it's why it's important as well. Then I think to persevere in these situations and to keep doing it because it proves people like my friend wrong who are like who knew nothing about journalism or things like that, but had the confidence to say, "Oh, right, well, you're kind of cheating and you're not a proper journalist, then are you?" And it's like, I out of all the journalists I know, even the ones who don't have any neurological disabilities or anything like that, I don't think any of them use shorthand. I just like great bully for you if you do, but like in my industry, with like video game journalism, none of us use it. Even when we go to events and do interviews, we use technology now because it's 2024. I don't remember, Anthony, the last time I picked up a pen and wrote anything, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I write something every day on my MacBook, which is probably why it's broken.
Even at school now, they tend to use they tend to use MacBooks and iPad, don't they? Because obviously
Yeah,
not wasting paper.
yeah. Oh, mate, I tell you what, if I like, I know I poked fun at myself for being a SWAT in uni, but I was not a SWAT in school. Not at all. I really struggled, and that was might have been one of the reasons why. But my God, give me my back book and send me back to school. Let's do it. We'll ace stuff because because this technology, this stuff we use now, the tools that we have at our disposal, they level the playing field, um, and they show up what needs to be shown up, and they help us show out when we need to show out. So I'm very thankful we kind of like live in this era. It would have been good to kind of like go through school now with all this cool stuff. That would have been mad. But like whatever, it'll be what it'll be, and I don't think it's held either you or I back that much from what I can see.
Yeah, whenever I need to write something, whether that's on social media or anywhere else, I tend to use voice to text software, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, me too. I may actually, I'll tell you something funny about that. When I text my wife, I like to
Yeah.
leave her three kisses. So if I'm ever leaving her a voice message, I have to say into my watch, okay, I'll be home for 6, XXX. So you're walking around the supermarket going XXX, and people are looking at you like, what the hell? So, but yeah.
I,
Uh,
I like, I like how you predicted text. Because I'll be saying something and then I'll just send it without reading it first. And then I'll read it after I sent it. And then it would say something completely different to what I said. When do you think it came into, when do you think it came into own as a journalist?
Well, when did I come into my own? I don't know if I have yet. Um, I think like it's nice once you find yourself in a position of leadership and you're like, oh right, wow, how did I get here? But I think, do you know what? Yeah, I think there is an answer to that, and it's when I stopped thinking about what can I do to like maybe aggrandize myself and make myself look good, and what can I do to help this younger journalist? What can I do to help them and maybe give them some information I would have liked or needed at their level, and then when you find yourself doing that naturally and you find yourself that being your priority, like helping a team as opposed to helping yourself. The same goes with ScreenSphere and Wrestlesphere and Deserto as well. That's when you think, oh wow, like, well, that's changed because you're used to it being all about yourself and getting ahead and making sure you're doing the right thing, and then all of a sudden you find yourself more thinking about how you can help that guy or whoever not make that same mistake again, and can you quickly clean up that mistake before one of the editors sees it and make sure they're all right, and you know what I mean, little things like that. So I think it might be that. I think you come into your own when you start helping the next generation. Because like I said, I'm 36. There's going to come a time where I've got no business being the guy writing about the game, writing about certain things. I might not be that guy anymore, but I can help coach the whoever is that guy then perhaps. So
So something that you said now. So do you think that there's a time limit on journalism, like a certain age expectancy, or do you think that's only in certain field, or do you think that just a personal thing that you feel?
no, I think it's like I don't think there is a particular cut-off point or anything like that. Like we are like our generation is a bit of a weird one because we're the first like generation of the plus 40 gamer, like the dad gamer, or the we're in that level where it's okay now to kind of be, as long as you are a functioning adult, it's okay to be a big kid. It's okay to be a bit of a geek. It's okay. It's like I remember telling my in-laws, like going on 12 years ago, that I will always have a games console in my front room. And they said, you won't, Sam. They said, in a few years, you'll grow out of it. And I said, I promise you I won't. So I don't think there's a cut-off point per se, but I think you do reach a point where you might not be the right person and you might not be as in touch as you once were. I think that's something that comes for all of us. And I feel it coming for me now sometimes with video games as the industry moves on and certain things pass me by and I need to either evolve or die.
Yeah,
Uh,
I, al-
so
I always say that to people. Even if I don't get something, I would take the time to look into it and see why Gen Z like it, or see why it's least po- popular. Like, to be honest, I don't really like TikTok, but I understand why it's popular and why people use it, but I don't personally like it because it doesn't fit my style of content. But I understand why people like it. Obviously,
you're leaps and bounds ahead of me though, mate, because I can't get my head around TikTok. I just can't do it. Like I find Instagram. It looks like I'm looking at ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I get Twitter, I get Facebook. They're fine. I'm fine with them. But when it comes to like Dom will say to me every now and then, for the love of God, will you put that interview up with Eric Young that you did on Instagram? You've done it on Twitter, you've done it on Facebook, but once again, you've ignored Instagram. And it's like, and I know if I just set my mind to it, it won't be so difficult. I should just do it. But it's like, yeah, I'm the same with TikTok. I've never even downloaded the app for TikTok. I have no desire to. I don't think I ever will. But yeah, so that's just an example of like I probably don't need to with TikTok, but I probably do need to get a grip on my Instagram gremlins. But yeah, it's I think it's because we get intimidated by certain things, or we don't see the value and it looks like you do see the value where I'm still trying to find that.
Like the mental battle with myself because I always struggle with with how to accept praise and how to believe how to believe in how to believe in myself as a content creator and just as a person to be honest.
Well, I'd say like with you, mate, you're already there. You've already made it. You've already got the badge and are now showing other people how it's done. So, that alone. I said the same thing to Tom. From Tom Talks Rubbish. Like, this might make you laugh. When we were at Money in the Bank, Tom Talks Rubbish had just interviewed Sean Ross Sapp,
Yeah.
like literally a couple of days before, and when I was introduced to Sean, along with Dom and Andy, I said, hi Sean, nice to meet you, big admirer. I believe we have a mutual friend, Tom Talks Rubbish, and his eyes light up. Sean Rossap, his eyes light up,
Yeah.
and he goes, "I love that guy. I absolutely love that guy." And then, like, I think I went off and was chatting to Bailey, but then name drop. But but then Dom and Sean then take a selfie and send that to Tom Talks Rubbish. I remember when I'm sure Tom won't mind me saying, but when he was having a little bit of like a low moment and he was doubting himself as a content creator and as a reporter and things like that, I said, Tom. I said, mate, Sean Ross Sapp was in a room of journalists. He had no idea who Wrestlesphere were, but he knew who you were. I said, take the W, mate, because like we were all there plugging. He had no idea who we were, but everyone in that room knew who Tom Talks Rubbish was. So I remember thinking that right there, mate. If you ever need any validation, if you ever need to think, am I still in the game? That's all you got to think. That's all you got to remind yourself of. And I think he appreciated that. But it's the same with you, mate. It's there are people in this world this strange bubble that we occupy of wrestling media who know exactly who you are.
So as we start wrapping it up, because I do want to be respectful of your time. What the biggest lesson that you've learned from journalism as a whole?
That there's quite a few, and some of them we've already touched on. I think for me, it's okay to be a creative and to find a way to monetize it is the wrong way to do it. It's okay to be a creative and to pursue a passion into your career. And I am of the view that you only get one life. So if you love something and if you're good at something, find a way to make that your job. Because if you can do that, and not everybody can, I'm aware of that, and not everybody will, I'm aware of that, and I know how privileged I am in the situation that I'm in. But if you can work towards that, then that is the path to be on. Don't settle. And with journalism, I've learned with journalism, we're all creative and we're all, like I recognize kindred spirits in journalism everywhere I go. That's why journos are friends with other journos. but I also recognize that we can all be a little bit narcissistic as well. So it's about accepting that and learn how to not, don't be a dick about it and
in,
be a good person at the same time.
in a weird way, doing what we do, whether that's journalism or podcasting, you do have to, you do it. I know it's gonna sound weird because of what I said earlier, but you do have to be a bit narcissistic, don't you? 'Cause
Yeah,
you put your face out there, and when you make content, I don't know like you, but when I make content, I make I make it with the sole purpose of people seeing it and people watching it or people listening to it, however they want to do it.
yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's about recognizing that, and that like, it doesn't make you a bad guy. It just means, you know, you're comfortable enough to be a bit of a showman, and that's all right. That's an admirable trait. That like it's nice to kind of have that. Like I love it if I write an article and I see it has a few thousand views. I like that. To me, I get a buzz out of that. I'm disappointed if it's only got a few hundred. I'm like, like it's still an achievement. A few hundred people have just read that crap you've just written, but but you can't turn that off. And it's the same. It's the same with podcasting. So what you should do instead, I think, is just know how to channel that constructively, and I think having some empathy. I think that's a key word there. Empathy is no one can ever have too much of that. Is what I'd say.
So my second question is you mentioned at the start that you're big like you're a big white like you're a big Ray White fan, Wyndham and Thunder. So what does Wyndham and Thunder mean to you as a fan?
He, yeah, this is a tough one. It's there was a lot of frustration in my fandom of Bray Wyatt because it was almost like, do you ever have those dreams where you're chasing something awesome, you nearly get it, and then you wake up and you don't actually get there?
Yeah,
That is kind of how I felt about a lot of Bray Wyatt's career, and I suspect it's what he felt a lot of the time as well. And a lot of it was, some of it was his fault, and a lot of it wasn't. Like Vince McMahon monetized the Fiend and saw a product rather than something to nurture
yeah,
creatively. It's kind of like they're doing with Howdy right now. They're kind of doing it the right way with Howdy.
yeah.
I have my own criticisms, but so far so good. So I think what Bray meant to me is he gave me something in wrestling that I wasn't getting from anywhere else, and I it's like having that flavor or that food in that, what do you say, like you eat a bag of popcorn and you get that extra salty piece of popcorn, and and it just that's the one that tastes so good. It tastes better than the rest, and that's the one you look forward to picking up and having. It was a bit like that with Bray Wyatt. Like I liked all the rest. All the rest is great, but that's the extra special bit that I'm looking forward to, um, because I like the spooky stuff. I like it to make sense. I didn't like it when he was set on fire by Randy Orton and all that silliness and the choking up of the black goo by Alexa Bliss. That was daft. And what the hell was that cube about? But I loved the idea of like the Firefly Funhouse being an elaborate ploy by Bray to play mind games on his opponents, or the Fiend being an intimidation tactic as opposed to a supernatural entity. And I think that's what they're doing well with Howdy. Like, obviously, Bo Dallas, and understandably so, is portraying just himself, which is a man who's lost his brother, a man who's
Yeah.
frustrated, a man who's, and he's then turned that into a bit of a cult dynamic. So there's no supernatural BS with the Wyatt Six. They're just a group of disaffected warriors who are using psychological warfare on their enemies. And that, what Bray means and what that means to me is it's just this another level of creativity that you can only get away with in wrestling. You can't get away with it anywhere else. Like part of wrestling, a big part of it is pantomime. It just is. and nothing epitomizes that more than what Bray Wyatt did and now what the Wyatt Six are doing. And I'm forever devastated that we lost Bray Wyatt, but I'm also insanely grateful that Bo has come back, has continued the Uncle Howdy gimmick with the Wyatt Six, and it's just mind-blowingly good TV. And I don't need it to be perfect, Anthony, either. I don't need it to blow me away. I don't need it to make change my life for the better. I just need it to be fun and to entertain me. Like, people have unreasonable expectations about this stuff, and they think it's going to cure all the ills of the world. It's not. It's just a storyline on a wrestling show. Look at it in that bubble, and criticize it when it's bad, and like it when it's good, like you do in anything with wrestling. But I think we get too attached, and we put too much expectation on it, because it's going to falter. I would argue there are things they've already messed up, but I'm still fascinated by it. And I haven't watched last night's Raw yet. I'm going to go and watch it now, and I can't wait for that very reason. And that's what I get out of Bray Wyatt. And I'm sorry, once again I gave you a long-winded answer.
Quick one. What did your partner think of what you do? Like, did she understand, or is she like, okay, you do your thing, but I don't really understand what you do, or is she like support? Did you understand?
Oh, she's all in. She's all in completely. Like, she's not. She only has a passing appreciation for video games and wrestling. Like, she only plays Stardew Valley and The Sims. She'll watch Raw with me. Mainly, I think Finn Balor's abs has got more to do with it than her enjoying the product. If I'm being honest. And I'm working on them, Finn. I'm trying to get mine as good as yours, but it's a long way off. And but yeah, she's supportive. She gets me, understands what makes me tick. So and she's used to my BS by now, and she knows what to accept, and what I am and who I am, and I think, like, all what I get from my wife is just acceptance. Like, she just gets it. She just knows. Mainly because she's been on the scene. I've been with her a long time. She's been on the scene a while. There's not much I can do now to surprise her. She knows I'm whimsical, and I'm a creative, and I'm all these different things. And she's very similar to me in a way. Like, she's a nurse, so she comes from quite a practical and like a medical background. Um, and so it's so we kind of work well together. But there are things I think that I'm into that might blow her mind sometimes. And every now and then, if I'm criticizing something she's watching, like she was watching Bridgerton the other day, and I was like, "What is this? What are you watching? This is the worst. The acting is terrible. It's just, Jess. It's just the worst. You're better than this." And she was like, and she just quietly muted the TV, looked at me, and went, "You watch wrestling."
Just, just,
And she's got me. She's got, like, yeah, like, it's like I said before. When you step away from wrestling and you look at it with some objectivity, it is ridiculous. So she was right. Now, she wasn't criticizing me for watching wrestling. She wasn't criticizing wrestling. She was pointing out my hypocrisy and my audacity for criticizing that silly program with wigs that she was watching.
what what console do you play? And you mentioned it a lot of times that you play games. So what console do you play?
I am a man who could never possibly choose between his PlayStation, his Xbox, and his Nintendo. So all three of them are my babies, and I kiss all three of them goodnight. Um,
as as I forgot, when I was young, I used to play games a lot, but as I got older, my hands got worse, so I didn't have the patience really to carry on playing with them. I know they have adaptive controller now, but to be honest, I would rather watch somebody play than play myself. I know that sounds weird, but I prefer to watch streamers play rather than play the game myself.
and I know what you mean. In a way, like, it might be worth looking into some of them too, because you never know. Like, there's some great games out there these days, but I've never been able to play pool. I've never had the coordination to play pool. I've like to the point where I'm embarrassed when someone asks me to play. I'm like, I just have to be honest these days and say, dude, I can't do that. But it's like, but I can look at the board, the table, and I can tell you where to shoot what ball. I know the theory. I just can't pot any ball. So it's
Yeah,
I'd rather watch.
yeah, but as I said, I know there's adapted controllers, so if I did want to play it, I could just look into it, but I just can't be bothered, to be honest.
I get it. I do. I wouldn't want to live in a world without Mario Kart. But I know what you mean. I completely understand
Uh,
where you're coming from.
So my last question is, when people hear the name Sam Smith, what would you like them to think? What would you like them to think of?
Well, they usually think of a singer when someone says that. But or before anybody knew who he was it was a brewery. Like there's actually the Tadcaster Ale in Yorkshire, Samuel Smith's. So that was what I got, but before Sam Smith came along. But like now, it's if I ring a call center and I tell them my name, they go, "Oh, do you know there's a singer with your name?" It's like, no, no, you're the first guy to mention that to me ever. I'm only just now learning of this. Yeah. So, what would I like people to? Well, first of all, I'd like them to know that Sam Smith puts out some excellent records. Then I would like them to think of me, my silly hat, and perhaps the wrestling content I put out. Like I'm not gonna lie, I have ambitions. Like I'd love to be more known in this space, particularly with through Wrestlesphere. And I think we'll get there as well. I think we've got the materials. I think we've got the people. I think we've got the plan. I'm confident that we will be at more WWE events, and I've got no desire to be a celebrity journalist like Sean Ross Sapp or Dave Meltzer or anything like that. But it would be nice to be considered an expert in the space for sure.
Oh, yeah, you know the Sam Smith joke. I was gonna make that. I was gonna make that joke when we first started, but I did, I did think you probably get that all the time. So I'm
Yeah,
not.
the writing would have been on the wall if you had. But stay with me, and we'll do it. They're the only two songs I know, by the way. They're the only two songs I know, and I've made those jokes endlessly at my own expense for years. But anyway,
So I want to thank you for giving up your night to come on. I really appreciate it.
that's all right, Anthony. It's been. I felt quite honoured to be asked. To be honest, like the heavy hitters that you've had on there in the on here in the past. It's like, oh wow. But yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving up your night. Thank you for, and I'm looking forward to watching this back. And what we'll do is let's try not to cringe when we watch it back. Like we said, we watch stuff, but we see ourselves back and we cringe. Let's try and not do that when we watch this one back. We'll probably both fail, but we'll have a go.
Probably. So before we go, would you like to promote Wrestlesphere or anything else that you've got going on at the moment, at the time of recording, that is?
Yeah, I think I'm going to plug the big three, which is the first thing I'm going to plug is my day job. That's Deserto Gaming. We put out like we have an amazing team. We put out so much quality gaming content now that we're competing with all of the big boys, especially with things like Diablo and things like that. It is a privilege to be part of that. Wrestlesphere has been mine and Dom's baby, and Andy's now as well. We're all taking it in turns to rock that baby. And Wrestlesphere is it's like Dom said to you, we're the anti-dirt sheet. We've got no intention of being a dirt sheet. What we are is we are the people who speak to the wrestlers, learn what they think, that we ask them stuff that other people might not ask them. As you saw with Eric Young, and that's the stuff we put out. We've done that for WWE, for AW, and for TNA. More for TNA than anybody else. It's lovely how much trust they put in us. And so yeah, check out Wrestlesphere if you want to see that, because that stuff is um, all raw, or proper interviews, and the wrestlers are people when we do that.
You,
Um,
Sorry, do you think because you portray yourself differently to some because you portray yourself differently to other sites, do you think wrestlers are more open with you or
Well, I don't know because like someone like Chris Van der Lip is one of the greatest wrestling interviewers I've ever known. So we just do it our way, and I'm not going to disparage any other sites and aggrandize us, but I am going to put us over because it feel when we do it, it does feel like we're having a conversation with a human being without the pomp. We do strip it down a little bit, and I have had people say to me our interviews are kind of fascinating to listen to because of that. And every Wrestlesphere interview you listen to, you will find a nugget of information that might surprise you about each of those wrestlers, like the Eric Young one, uh, especially, and some of them are funny, some of them we have a good laugh, with the wrestlers. Joe Hendry was absolutely hilarious, when we spoke to him a few times. Um, but yeah, so I think so. But the third and final thing I'll plug is Give Me a Whole Yeah. Um, with me stepping away from SmackDown, there are a few shake-ups coming in terms of some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. I'm tempted to do a fantasy booking series because I kind of get excited in fantasy book stuff when we're doing streams. So I'm tempted to do like requests to fantasy book different things. Um, and we'll see where that goes. So yeah, they're the three things I'd want to
uh,
do.
once again, I would like to thank you for coming on and thank you for watching everyone. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like, share and subscribe. If you're listening on audio platforms, please share it around or, or try and get it as high in the charts as we can.
Like Sam Smith.
I must say, I do like your wit.
Thank you very much. I wish other people did, but yeah, I get eye rolls from my wife, so it's not. I'm glad that you appreciate it.
So, so thank you for watching or listening, everyone, and have a good day. Thank you for the support. Have a good night. Have a good day. Bye bye. Thank you.